Okay.
So excited.
We have launched a thing instead of just, oh my God, no, wait. We have intro music now. If you listen to the first episode, I said, hello, my name is Daniel, and all I want is a little bit of music. And Sam said, fine. I think that's how it went, something along those lines.
Something like that, yeah.
I have goaded Sam in over...
We'll see how it edits in. You know, it's funny, I've been on a lot of podcasts where they live in the episode trigger sounds and stuff, and they do have that as a feature. And there's like a little media button on Riverside, the app we use, and it's funny. I just can't bring myself. It's just so much easier in my brain to get the timing right and everything. Just pop it in and post. Like, you don't have to do it. Although they do have like fake audience laughter and stuff like that, I guess.
Oh my God, we have fake audience laughter? Oh, wonderful.
And that's how we have to try and go. So going live with it. Ready?
Okay.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, that's loud. Thanks for your appreciation, everybody. This is Endless Appreciation. I'm Daniel. You can tell my voice from Sam's by how many times I go, Oh, this is terrible. Let's never use these again.
Yeah, I'm going to close.
So we have intro music now. That's very exciting. We have outro music. I think it works. We'll find out because we won't know until it's edited into the second episode, which is happening right now. Would like to take a moment and say thanks, everyone, for saying very nice things and sharing with your friends. Keep doing that. That's great. We love nice things and sharing.
Yes, we did a little soft launch. I've done. I was planning all in one go to do like a big push and promo, but it's something I've struggled with for a long time. Is the timing of promoting things, especially for me. It's very important to orbit high value posts on Patreon clear of any other stuff that I'm doing so that gets like maximum reach without having to pay to boost a post or something like that. And it's it's now solved, but for 6 years, basically, it was so frustrating that Patreon billed people not on the anniversary of the day they signed up. So if you signed up on the 22nd, you would get billed the 22nd of the next month. Oh, no. You sign up on the 22nd, because it sort of makes sense, because you get instant access to everything on that tier. They charge immediately, and then they recharge again on the 1st. And they even put that in like big bold letters, but people don't read, and people just assume it's going to work like every other subscription service, which is safe to us. You would think that, but no. So it like completely influences when I want to post stuff, because if I post something a week, 2 weeks, the second half of the month, essentially, anytime in those last 2 weeks, and promote it and like try and make a big thing, like this is a huge post, it's super high value, people sign up and then they get billed a week later, and now they're just pissed and they leave. Or they do read and they come and they would have otherwise signed up, but they don't, and then they just forget and move on with their life. It's like how much revenue is probably lost because of that is very disheartening to think about.
So that's a great question that I've wanted to ask, is how do you balance being an educator, right? Like you post a lot on your Patreon. You suckered me into it accidentally, because you just would have sent me the thing if I had asked, but you wrote a review on Glass, but it was a locked review, and I was like, fine, I'm just gonna give this guy $10. So I did. I gave you your $10 or whatever it is, $9, $12. I don't know. You fill in whatever number this is. You tell
12.
me. Yeah. So I give you your $12, and I then get to read, hopefully, the nice review of Glass. It was, which was great, because I would have been really mad to pay $12 to be like, this app kind of sucks.
That's true.
But then you sent out like another post and another post and another post, and then suddenly you put out like 5 posts really relatively quick.
It ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. Like it's all balanced based on how I'm feeling, noticeable trends in certain questions that come up about maybe a new software feature or something like that. If I get 3 or 4 people DMing me asking about something that's new or whatever it might be, I tend to make a mental note or add it to my little list of ideas, and then that's it. There's no real pattern or expectation that I set of how often I'm going to post, which maybe some people like, maybe they don't, but it makes it nice for me just to not have the weight of, I mean, eventually I'm like, okay, it's been a week. I should probably like go to my list and tease something out if nothing's coming to mind. But generally it's really nice to not have. Plus, when you look at other kind of education content in the wedding photography space, this is by far and away the most value you could possibly find. So in the end, I never feel, I mean, it's,
I love
yeah,
that.
of course I'm going to say that. But
Mine
I mean,
is clearly the best.
People charge hundreds or thousands of dollars for workshops that are awful, like real bad. I mean, some are amazing, but a lot of them are real bad. And they just charge that upfront fee that they've captured, the curiosity and interest of their audience, mostly based on branding. And the trade-off is also worse, because now you have maybe $1,000 8-hour workshop you bought. That's great. Now you got to sit there for 8 hours and try and parse through all this stuff, or go to a certain section, whatever. With Patreon as a place to learn, I've always loved, because for me, it makes sense, because I back a few other people on Patreon, to have really, like, some posts that are really complex, some that are really easy, come and go every week or two, and get that like slow drip, that evolutionary process of learning, versus trying to binge it all in 8 hours. Now, some people, don't get me wrong, they're like, oh, I've got a week off, or I've got a couple of days where the kids are away, I'm going to binge everything I can and get it done. But I think in general, being able to take things slowly in small bites versus trying to absorb it all in one 8-hour go is also better.
So how do you balance?
Yeah, I didn't even answer your question.
How do you balance? Well, you didn't let me get to it, but that was great context for the question that's coming. How do you balance marketing your education and marketing your photography business, right? Because like they're effectively using the same channels, right? Like one of your largest marketing channels is Instagram, and people who are finding you on Instagram are either finding you because you're a photographer and they want to, like, learn things from you and or steal your style, copy things, learn, steal like an artist, whatever, or they are looking to book you as a wedding photographer, so they're looking at your wedding photos.
Yeah, it's a balance. You have to feel out. My primary goal, especially on my website, which is like the main engine of getting actual wedding clients, is to always emphasize the wedding clients first. Like, this is clearly built with them as the first priority, and then everything else. So if I do have too big of a gap in maybe like social media or my blog or whatever, where places that I post most often, if I do have too big of a gap between wedding shoots, I try not to just overfill it with all this educational stuff, because then potential new clients that are generally, when I'm not actively shooting, I'm actively getting leads. That tends to be where things flip in the season, and the winter is when people start to inquire more and book more. So I don't want to fill my feed with like all this photographer aimed stuff. It has to be balanced so that it's clear my priority is being a wedding photographer. And then I think what I've always believed is that if a potential client comes across the fact that I also teach and have a workshop somewhere, or I'm sharing a behind the scenes, that gives them more insight and context into the environments that I'm working in and all that, but also this unspoken confidence, like, oh, yeah, okay, so he's teaching a group of 15 photographers or speaking at a conference or whatever. Like, he's clearly a professional. He knows what he's doing without having to convince them of that. It's always been this nice little circle that just kind of feeds itself, but it still all has to hinge on wedding clients continuing to hire me. And so I try and prioritize that always. That's one of the things I really, really love about stories, is that they expire and they go away. And I will archive and make things go away on my feed if I post it there and it's starting to feel a little too photographer targeted. I'll take stuff down so that it's clear. I love the pinned post feature on Instagram, because that way I can always have at the top more client aimed stuff if I want. Stuff like that is what you kind of have to keep in mind. But I've seen it. I've seen a lot of photographers get really, really successful in the education space, or they have a workshop that they have had really successful sales with, and they like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. and their entire feed just becomes photographer to photographer content, which is fine for the short term when you're doing all that. But I think before you know it, those decisions come back to get you a year or two later. Like it's a very long process of finally getting to shoot somebody's wedding a lot of times, and so you just have to be mindful of consistently prioritizing that, especially if you're an educator, because not only do people to stay relevant, you need to be actively shooting, like straight up. I hate the idea of photographers still teaching stuff that they haven't shot a wedding in 15 years, but like they have their methods and their formulas, but you know, a lot changes in 15 years. And yeah, at broad strokes, it might be the same, but that's also probably the more easy, boring stuff that only a truly new person would need to figure out. There's so much more important things that change that aren't obvious. And if you haven't shot a wedding in 15 years, that's a problem.
What's a I want to know. What's a non-obvious thing that's changed since you started shooting weddings to now? Just a single one.
Since I started, Instagram. Instagram wasn't a thing when I started shooting weddings. I don't know that it even launched.
When did you start? It launched in
2011.
Yeah, October 2012 is when Instagram launched.
Facebook business pages. That was where it was. Like I was blowing up on there. I quickly got 100,000 something followers within maybe 2 years on business pages. Now, and I was already starting to like teach workshops and everything before Instagram really started to take off. And I was late to the game on Instagram because I'd had so much success on my business page. I was like, no, I don't want to be posting somewhere else. Facebook's never going to let this die. Like people are really famous because of their business page. They're not that stupid. No, they definitely let it die. And if I had stopped and just become an educator, which I could have done for a few years and made enough money to be fine, I would potentially still be saying, this is how important your business page is. And actually, it has come back a bit. They have breathed some life into business pages. Organic reach has definitely gotten better over the years over there. But that's like one example. There are things that are a lot more subtle. I might have to think about a little more. I mean, mirrorless cameras. I can't tell you how many educators from the era like of the aughts that lived through the literal transition from film to DSLRs. They still shoot today and teach with DSLRs, which is fine. You don't have to have a mirrorless camera, but if you're a working professional working every single weekend, you really should have a mirrorless camera at this point. Like, I'm not saying every educator's like that, but I know many that are, just because they're fine shooting their little workshops with a simple DSLR. They know what works and it's fine, and their work is the same as it's ever been, which is good enough to do a lot of educational stuff. But I also think it's really important to just grow yourself as a photographer. And if your portfolio suddenly turns to just content that has been made at workshops, that's another bad thing you don't want. If it's like to sell to people who are looking to learn from you. That's my opinion on it. You just lose touch with a lot of the industry dynamics, the relationships, new companies that have come. Oh my God, photo fucking mechanic needs to die. It needs to go. I sat and did hours long videos, time-lapse videos of here's Photo Mechanic, here's Lightroom. Lightroom's faster. There is the exact feature parity that Photo Mechanic has exists in Lightroom now. You can choose to have it show you the embedded in sidecar image directly from your raw file, exactly what Photo Mechanic does. You do not need to use it, but people still teach and use it because it used to be the only way to instantly see your embedded JPEGs on the raw file. So there was no render time and delay. But people fall into a workflow or a method or a way of doing things that really works solid for them. Fine, that's great. But when there is a paradigm shift, like the exact feature is now built into Lightroom, which they released like 5 years ago, maybe 4, I don't know. It's time to move on. It's time to change. But
I haven't heard the name Photo Mechanic in a long time.
I cannot tell you how often it comes up, and especially on Reddit. And that's where I really explode. I'm like, hey, no, this is stupid. Stop. And then I'm downvoted to oblivion because everybody thinks that it's the best thing ever.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why do you still use Reddit? I love you. You're like the only person I know who is still active on Reddit in like a real sense, right? Like you're an inactive moderator for wedding photography, our wedding photography, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. But like you, like at least once a week, will like take a screenshot of something you've posted on Reddit and post it to your stories because you're angry about something.
It's an awful toxic place. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Like I had a friend describe it as like the biggest wine store where you're either gonna get the best glass of wine you ever had or sewage, and there's no in between.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah,
so like you could find the best little piece of content that you've ever wanted, and like you're finally seen and heard, and you're in a little group of 12 people and you're happy and oh, what a wonderful joy. Or you're just going to have sewage in your glass, and that's the only option. Right.
Well, where do you go? Where are you engaged in a community actively? Is it Discord?
Glass.photo.
Glass.photo.
Everyone show up to
Well, I am excited for that to build up, because the main draw for me is keeping a pulse on the wedding photography subreddit, because there are some people I know personally that are fairly active still, and some interesting topics that get going. Sorry, popcorn is very excited. And I'm much more a reader than anything else. I turn off video autoplays on Reddit, and it's all about the text. I love reading. So, not just having a community of people having discussions, but sharing, it's like an aggregator of links across all the web. I don't know. It just works for me.
I mean, my answer is I don't know where I go anymore. I went to Twitter, right? Like I've been a Twitter user for 15 years, heavy.
Twitter versus Reddit. I mean, which is more healthy
now,
or not?
It's like, why are we debating between the worst? I am in this weird spot right now, if I'm being honest, personally, about the internet in general. So another thing that's been happening over the last few weeks and months and years is that like there's this level of well-off indie developer or indie company or like independent companies that have like staked a flag as we're doing something different. And they did this like in 2008 to 2012. There was like kind of this big push around the indie web and developing things. And we're kind of seeing that come back with the Fediverse and Mastodon. But these first round of people, right? They have a weird dichotomy that's existing in this space that's hard for me to square, right? So, hooray, we're supporting the one that's on my brain this week is Pinboard. Pinboard was a vaguely Pinterest style and or Instapaper style thing for saving articles, right? It was a single guy. He just made a nice piece of software, charged some money for it, and like built a brand around being that guy. He then a couple of days ago came out in defense of J.K. Rowling being a TERF, and I was like, does she actually hate trans people, guys? I don't know, right? So like it's like, oh, okay. And he was like, I don't know, man. So like there's like that moment where, ooh, and then a couple months ago, another example would be DDH from 37 Signals slash Basecamp. Like they have always pivoted, like shown themselves as, oh, we're building this independent space. We've only taken a single investment, and that was for us to not worry about money anymore, not worry, like they took a bunch of money from Jeff Bezos like 15 years ago. After they had already reached profitability, they just gave him, 5 or 10% of the company, and then they pay him distributions whenever they take distributions. That's it. That's the deal. And they got enough money to like be set for life from that. They were just taking it off the table. They were selling a portion of their thing, which is great. Like I love that. Legitimately love that. It's like if you are in a position where you can sell a small portion of your company to set yourself up for life, great, do that, right? Like do that. But
is the disconnect for you the fact that these are like super successful, very rich people now?
Well, no.
More
so there's more. So DDH specifically, has been a prolific blogger. They've written many books. They've been held up as, effectively like this allyship that exists where it's like, hey, we're rich and successful because we made this thing, but there's, like these are great. We're open. We are supportive of the issues that we're trying to talk about on the internet, because there's this connection between independent businesses and small companies and effectively more marginalized communities on the internet, right? Like you will feel safer on a platform that has a, no hate speech rule that is enforced than Twitter, right? Like so there's this like dichotomy that kind of exists where this was fine, but now some of them have reached a certain level of wealth where they are no longer actually practicing allyship, right? Like DDH had just an absurd and obscene rant about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we're in the waning days of it, and thank God it's finally dying, and like hard pivot. The reason it was a hard pivot is because they said no politics at base camp like 2 years ago, and
I remember there was some controversy around that. Was that also around something related to Hello, the email app they launched or something?
Hey, it was their head of product was a very much right-wing person who was posting a lot in their Slack, and a bunch of employees were like, hey, this makes us very uncomfortable. So they just did a hard no politics rule, and everyone was like, pardon? And then Coinbase did the same thing, right? And like it kind of kicked off this movement. Meta recently did the same thing of like no politic conversations on work. Yeah.
Meta?
Yeah. And so like,
okay.
It's just, like politics doesn't impact how you build the business or why you build the business or, a business decision, right? It's totally separate from business it's not. I'm being very sorry. I'm not sure if my sarcasm is properly dripping off of my voice.
Thank you for clarifying. But that's especially if I hadn't heard that about Facebook. I resist calling them Meta just because it's like, come on.
It's bad. It's just Facebook, especially since the metaverse is not happening. Anyway.
It's funny how quickly that seems to have collapsed, by the way. I'm very, very glad to hear that, or to see this.
Yeah, so like like this idea of like fragile allyship, right? And like fragile friends and companions has been like on my brain quite a bit as a not straight person acting on the internet, right? Like these people were people that like I met at conferences. I've had online relationships with some of them, and then there comes like this moment where it like shifts around like accountability, right? Like there's like an accountability moment where you have to be held accountable for a less than ideal action or like a bad workplace, right? Like DDH, instead of being like, oh no, we screwed up, right? Like we fostered a bad culture at our company and we're going to work really hard to do that. They just like bought everyone out who had a problem with it. And
so that's my question then. Do you think it's a possible consequence of money now having access to so much? People that reach that range where they're set for life can just throw money at basically any problem, and everything is sort of friction free in that way. Just like, let's buy them. Or do you think it's these people and founders were always had these beliefs and just kind of like kept them under wraps until they were had enough leverage in their career that it didn't matter what they wanted to do because now they've got a buyout? Or is it's been a decade since they were a normal person
right,
with normal relationships in the world, and they just simply don't remember or don't understand.
I mean, I don't know.
A mix of all,
like one of my old clients is a venture capitalist. He is very, very wealthy, and he is a wonderful straight white Mormon dad. And like I have had nothing but like joy and acceptance from him. He has more money than most people I know, right, or have ever met. And so like I think money makes it easier, right? Like I think having access to unlimited amounts of capital, or what feels like unlimited amounts of capital, or, like too much capital, money just like makes you more who you are, right? Like if you are a nice, kind person, you have more money, you will end up doing nicer, kinder things. And so I don't know. So hopefully. Like part of it's money.
I like how optimistic you are. I feel like I'm an optimistic person, and I don't know that I would have ever actually believed that, but maybe.
I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, there is a certain level of like bullshit to this, right? Like, the wealthier you get, the more you hold on to that wealth, and that's a societal fact, right? Like 100%. Wealthy people hold on to their wealth, but there are wealthy people who are donating more money. And to be clear, Warren Buffett is not the person I'm talking about here. Like the Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, I'm donating my $100 billion is just like nonsense. It is them guarding their wealth via tax havens in an LLC that's a nonprofit. It is not altruistic. It's not
interesting.
Great.
Yeah.
But like a person who is like a relatively wealthy person who then can afford to fund their favorite nonprofit a little better, right? So they're donating a couple $1,000.
Ex-wife, I feel like, might be unless I'm sure they all have great PR teams, but she seems to be quite.
She is the closest that's actually doing the giving away the money thing.
Yeah.
But even then, like when you have that much money, you can't give away the money fast enough because it earns so much money on its own, right? And like your assets just keep appreciating that, like you can't give it away. Part of it's money, and like part of it's too much success. Part of it's echo chambers, right? There's also this like the independent web over the last decade has been in a really odd spot, and like I think it's finally finding itself a lot with the Fediverse. Even though I'm pretty skeptical about the Fediverse as a concept, I think that like it has found a niche that is important as a defining characteristic. Because before it was like, oh no, just make your own blog, right? Like don't use big social media platforms, but or don't think that you own your content on large social media platforms because they're just going to go away, right? Well, that's true. Like your Facebook business page doesn't turn out the way that it used to, right?
No.
Like the way that I helped build a photography studio a decade ago just doesn't exist anymore because I could just spend $100 on Facebook ads and suddenly our calendar was full because I knew how to use Facebook ads in 2012 and our competitors didn't.
Yep, 100%. That was, I was definitely early on. Oh, okay, I'm going to spend, I don't remember my average spend. It wasn't even that much, but it clearly worked. And this is before I think they even had a pixel you could embed in your site and all that kind of stuff. This is like way early, and it was incredible how well it worked. So 2 points. One, maybe we can put a pin in this for another episode, or we can pivot to it. I had a great discussion with a friend of mine. I've been blocked by a colleague. I would never have described him as a friend, but I kept calling out his AI art as a problem because he's just generally not somebody I look up to. He's a great photographer, but essentially selling very expensive prints of Mid-Journey generated 100% AI art, essentially totally unmodified, and making hundreds of thousands of dollars basically. And so whatever, that's fine. Good for them. But I think that they, should be open to some critique and criticism about what's actually going on here, because the vast majority of people buying this stuff and engaging with his sort of semi-viral accounts now have no idea. And it's funny because it's a time where you can literally say, yeah, this is AI art. And people are like, wow, you should go into fashion design. These people in these photos, the clothes are amazing. It's like, you don't understand that he didn't say red button, blue button, yellow stripes. No. That's not how, you can say that, but it's just a giant gap now in understanding between what is occurring with AI generated stuff. And at the end of the day, something you said is triggering this memory. It's upsetting that, remember maybe like, happens every few years, but it was a big deal maybe like 8 years ago where Facebook changed their terms of service so that it sounded a little ambiguous about, do you own your stuff? Does Facebook own your stuff? And now we are seeing something we never could have imagined way back then when Facebook was like, it's fine, you own your photo, we don't have the copyright. But clearly they must be a feeder for a lot of these AI apps just scraping the internet for data. And if a photo of mine is 1/1,000,000th or 1/100th, any amount part of an engine that is generating something because it's now better informed with what some text prompt is asking for, I should be compensated for that completely. Even if it's penny, I don't care, some amount.
Or we could turn it off. Or we could just turn it off.
I want to say Getty Images, they just won some kind of court case related to that. I can't quite recall what it is, but yes, 100%. Like the ability to turn it off is really key. It's a very interesting space, but The other thing you were mentioning, oh shoot, I need to start just taking notes as we talk.
Right. So there's like this idea that, like the internet changes really quickly, right? So what works a decade ago and what works for, like businesses is shifting all the time. And we're always trying to find new ways. The culture of what is also acceptable to do and say on the internet and or what you can expect from each other as participants in online communities and, at conferences and these sort of things has been like shifting. Like I don't know when it started. I know it came to like ahead in 2015 and 2016 with the elections, right? Like the best description I saw of it was Hillary Clinton's team was writing tweets to do well on Twitter. Trump was writing tweets to get on news. To get news cycles. Like, oh, yep. Right. Like everyone remembers Hillary Clinton's delete your account tweet. It's like, LOL, that was hilarious. She did so great. But it's like, okay, but that didn't then spark a news story that was the news cycle for 24 to 48 hours. All they talked about was her, right? Like that didn't happen. And so like there was this moment where, you start saying awful things online to then get to feed into the algorithm to then get higher ranked, right? Like there are all these like little tips that exist on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram, right? Like where you have to do little things. Like a current one that has recently broken was the locked account thing on Twitter. Like if you locked your account, it made the algorithm ranked your tweets higher on your followers.
Okay.
If you're following me, you would see one of every like 5 tweets or whatever that I had. But if I locked it, it would rank it a little higher than other people's tweets because it's a locked account. Therefore, it's a little bit more personal was the thought. And so it would rank higher.
I hate this stuff. This is something I've always just dreaded about the dialing up the algorithm and dialing down the organic reach. I was talking to somebody at a conference a couple weeks ago. And first of all, these games where they make a change in the algorithm and don't really tell anybody what the changes are, really frustrating. Like if you're going to make a change, why not just say, hey, you're going to get way more reach if you make a carousel of 10 images versus just one image. That is a fact now, at least in my work.
No, that is definitely a new thing that came out as of like 3 weeks ago. They've rebalanced away from reels towards carousels. It has to be a full 10 and it's going away maybe by the time that this episode comes out early next week.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, did they share that in a blog post in detail?
No. Oh. This is just the social media community manager grapevine.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. I hate that stuff because, and then, okay. So first of all, because it tricks people that might otherwise be making really good work into thinking they're not, because they did fine 2 years ago, posting one image and built an entire business off that. And now, I mean, I've seen this with really close friends of mine, Ryan Muirhead, like incredibly good photographer, beautiful stuff. A lot of it features like close to nude or partially nude people that he does take time to censor because whatever. Eventually, like they had a hard line for that, and so fine. But he's totally indiscoverable, and he would be getting thousands and thousands of interactions, posting the exact same work, and now he's thinking, "Am I getting worse as a creator?" Like this starts to work in a downward spiral. And what I think it all comes back to is, first of all, the algorithm is really icky because of that. And second of all, I was having a discussion at a conference with a person who was on a Flickr group that I was a part of forever ago. I know we've talked about this before, but I think one of the reasons lifelong friendships and relationships with people came out of that era of the old internet and the aughts and everything was because it asked something from you. It required you to have in the back of your head, I wonder what Daniel's doing. I wonder if Daniel's made a new post on Flickr. I'm going to go look and check. And then, he didn't, but maybe somebody else did, or maybe you did. And so that kind of process just sort of always running in the background of your head because you have to go look physically yourself, digitally yourself, is deep, and it makes it more valuable versus something that is just a notify, like, oh, okay, I'm following this person. I'm sure I'll see them now because I'm following them. Like, no, that's not how it works. And people forget, and you lose that habit.
we have to like remind people of this in our onboarding emails, right? Like
Yeah.
we literally have to say like, hey, this is going to feel like work, and that's a feature, not a bug. Like that is
100%.
what you need, and or what you're going to find here. And if you stick with it long enough, right, like it's going to feel great. I had a
100%.
few friends who downloaded and just like couldn't get in the habit of using Glass. They were like, "Yeah, I signed up. Thanks for like
Yeah.
building this, and of course I'm signing up because you're my friend." But like, it's not sticky enough. I'm like, okay, just put it on your home screen.
That's what I did.
Like just
That's
like
exactly-
literally just put it on
Yeah.
your home screen for like a month and just see how you feel. And like every single one of them is now posting all the time because they're like, oh my God, right? Like
Yeah.
the habit has been formed. I care about a thing and now I'm doing it, as opposed to the opposite way, which is how apps are designed today, which is we gave you dopamine and you're going to come back for that dopamine. And so like but like this version of the internet that we've built with, both the indie web and also this, like larger web 2.0 VC funded culture of, massive social networks and data harvesting, whatever, right? There's been like this separation or tried to be a separation of like, well, no, smaller bootstrap things are this, right? And it's like, well, I don't know how much it is over here so much as they're connected, right? Like I can't build a, like the way that we would get Glass would have gotten users in 2017 is very different than how we get users right now, right? Like how we get users right now is literally just ask our members to share it. Like that's the only thing that has been effective as a continual thing, right? Like sometimes we'll have a tweet that goes viral or something, right? Like Instagram went down a year ago, a year ago, and everyone was like, okay, Instagram's down, make a joke on Twitter. I'm like, a competitor's outage is not a marketing opportunity. Like no one's right. Like no one's joining Glass because Instagram is down for 3 hours. And so I even made a meme of Gru, right? Like the Gru meme from Despicable Me, where he is showing the plan and then like the third step of the plan is failing or whatever. And so I like made that as it's not a marketing opportunity. And Stefan was like, can you just tweet that for me, please? And I was like, fine. So then I made a bunch of dumb memes, and we got like, we got a significant amount of subscribers from that dumb joke.
Nice.
And that was great.
That's awesome.
But like, right, like there aren't other moments where it's like, oh, that one tweet did really well, and there's no way to know what did really well and why it did really well. There's nothing attributable.
Yes.
Same with Instagram, same with launching a new thing, right? Like how we get members is now switched very organically to like pre-social media
Hey, I just got a
numbers
patron.
because like social media just doesn't exist in the same way and doesn't work in the same way without having massive budgets.
So
right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
One thing, and unfortunately, this is sort of already being done by via stories. But one thing I've always enjoyed about stories is the fact that they're temporary, and so and everybody knows it, right? They're 24 hours. It would be interesting to play around, and maybe others have. I don't know. Maybe you've even discussed it at Glass, but like a component of the experience where it is only temporary. They are just fleeting thoughts that are permanent, and you have to think through, is this part of my brand, or can I just share something silly because it's just here?
We definitely have that problem at Glass. We know it's a problem of people only post high value photos, like personally high value photos to Glass. They're posting their best of the best. And what we want is not if someone wants to share their snapshots on Glass, there are a lot of people that do it. That's great. Please continue doing that. But like, there's this idea of like, there's got to be an in between. There needs to be a little less of I'm sharing an image I care about.
That's why the blog is so valuable, or was back in the day, although it still is. Like, you had your portfolio, and then the blog is sort of understood as like, this is my day to day. Like, not every image is going to be strong, but it's a bit more realistic. Yeah.
There's also, like what you're shooting and when you're sharing it and how you're sharing it, like impacts when you use it again, right? We talked about this once with words, where I found words from 2005 that I thought I had written new recently.
That's on one of our hidden backlog episodes.
It's one of our backlog episodes that will come out at some point somehow, once we figure out and decide how. But like it's that same sort of thing of like, I don't know when I started. I use like a lot of doors, right? Like my themes in my work are like self-portraits, doors, cars, street photography. That's it, right? Like that's all I do. I know that's all I do. That's fine. I don't know when I started using doors, but I know that the first doors that I used during year or two that I was developing that as part of my style and part of my like photographic vibe weren't great, right? But like having a place to share that and having a place to put that and having a place for it to live mattered. Right. So there's like this medium value thing. It's the same reason we didn't launch with appreciations. We wanted to launch with comments only because we needed comments to be a less high value thing. Because right now, commenting on someone's Instagram post or replying to a tweet, it's like a really high value internet point thing, right? Like it takes time, it takes effort. And there's like a barrier that people won't cross for whatever reason. It's like if we're building a community and photography platform, like we need people to talk to each other and we need them to be comfortable talking to each other. And the only way that we could think to do that was like make it the only thing you could do, right? Like, all you could do was comment for the first 4 months on Glass. Like, yes, we've had thousands and thousands of people join since we released appreciations, but we set that foundation of comments and user member behavior from folks who were there at the beginning, who then realized comments weren't that big of a deal. Like, oh, we can just do it. That's just kindness, right?
Can I also just say, with commenting, one of the big, huge advantages of not being ad-based is you're not super selfish about the amount of time people are locked into being on Glass. So I'm assuming this is why you were fine making this decision. Anything you link to in a comment or in a caption is a clickable, tappable link. I don't have to say, go to my bio link and self-promote and remind people every single time to do that. I love that there's embeddable, tappable. It's like very frustrating to me that Instagram has never had that, but they don't want people leaving. They don't want that unless you are paying for an ad that has a learn more button or shop now button.
And even then, it's opening in the Instagram browser where they're tracking everything you're doing all the way through your credit card number. It's fine. No, it's not fine. So like, so these baggage and all of these things that we've picked up over the last decade or whatever are also kind of like reconvening as we're clearly battling for what the internet's going to be about, right? Investors aren't investing that much money, right? And how they're investing is like rapidly different. So like what is venture funded right now is a very different thing than what was venture funded 5 years ago. And like the business model for venture capital has shifted quite a bit. And the markets that all of these things were built on are crumbling. The only reason that it like a seed round for a startup would be $2.5 million is because everyone knows that at least $1 million of that is going to Meta ads, right? Like Instagram, Facebook, and that's it, right? Like that's where it's going. Because they need to get enough users to reach a certain plateau that they can get their next round of fundraising because they have enough traction. And so that then that original seed funder, right, will then make money off of them taking that next round, right? Like that's when they will make their money and vice versa. So like each subsequent round of fundraising is when the previous people will make their rounds and or take it all the way to the top.
Not at all like a pyramid.
And then what? And then oops. So then, or it fails spectacularly, they take the mark down and, hooray.
Don't pay taxes ever again. Yeah, who knows?
Basically. So like this, how these things are shifting, how you can get a lot of eyeballs on the internet doesn't exist anymore, right? Like it used to be easy at the beginning of social media. Now it's incredibly hard, right? Like your stories, you have whatever it is, like 110,000 followers, 107, whatever it is, and you get like 2% engagement per story, if that, right? Like if you're lucky.
And only if it's timed right, and only if I haven't posted too much And if there's a 24-hour gap between when I made my last post, it's like,
Yeah.
again, these algorithm games are frustrating.
It's wild. And so like there's this version of the internet that was built, and these, like the hero indie people from that version of the internet built it by having access to these networks that don't exist anymore. Right. So like, I don't know how new people come up in this space, and I don't know how new people succeed. Right. Like I deeply wish we had launched Glass 5 years ago instead of 2 years ago, because it just would have made my job so much easier. Right. Like I would have said, hey, give me 2% of our, monthly revenue, and that'll just go to ads. And then we'll just keep seeing 7% growth. Easy breezy. Right. Like that's it. Yeah. That's all it would have taken. That's no longer my job. Right? Like that is no longer what it looks like. That is no longer the realities of I can give someone $1,000 and I can get back, $3,000 worth of subscriptions.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I will say, very grateful that, at least in my world, most of my favorite corners of the internet are still like distinct websites from like people that control it. It's a WordPress thing. It's built custom, whatever. And I still have that desire and pull to go check what's been shared on Daring Fireball. Like it asks that from you, and that's why he has such a bulletproof, insanely successful business. From being so consistent.
I love how much of a Gruber fan you are. Gruber, John Gruber, the show,
big fan. He gets it. Clearly better than me. He's much older and more experienced. Like clearly he gets it. But it's just such a rare thing. Another one is Stratechery, which I've mentioned to you a few times with Ben Thompson, who I saw come start like his business. Essentially, he just started just being a tech commentator, sort of just writing articles about whatever topic, more business school related, and slowly started to build a big membership to Stratechery. And I learned about him through John Gruber, and then I just listened to every podcast and read everything he put out, and so did everybody else. And now he's like partnered up with Gruber for a podcast, and they share a lot of overlap and their success. But it was amazing to see somebody use essentially a model that Gruber built in a much faster, more efficient way, and both of them be able to benefit from that like awareness and commitment to not doing crap like algorithmic whatever.
There was a talk at a conference I went to years ago, and the guy got up and was just like, this is how I won the lottery. Let me tell you how to win the lottery. Because, like success is so random, and it really is just like winning the lottery if your thing is wildly successful versus not, right?
Can be.
Which is not to say, like one of the things that drives me bananas is when people are like, no one knows what we're doing. We're all just faking. It's like, no. No. A lot of us are trying really hard. A lot of us know exactly what we're doing. You're telling on yourself a little bit.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So there's this idea around like not knowing what you're doing, and it's like, no, we do. We really do. And that's what a lot of conference talks are, is they don't acknowledge that. Like, we got lucky here and we worked really hard here. Or, so this guy got up and like did this is how to win the lottery. You play the lottery a lot. I bought a lot of tickets and then I won the lottery. You should keep doing it. And he did a full 25-minute talk with just, this is how you win the lottery. It was perfect. Most people thought it was a bit of a like joke, not realizing that he was like satirizing every talk that had come before him that day and that conference and that forever. But I really love that. Harder and harder to win the lottery now, right? Like it's harder and harder.
There's a lot more people. There's just so many people in the world.
But like, there's not a finite amount of success to be had here, right?
True.
Like, you are not worried about a new wedding photographer popping up in Baltimore and suddenly your business disappearing, right? Like,
no, I guess not. There have been some that do very similar work to me, my style, definitely influenced by me, and I'm sure that has scooped up some market share. I don't know.
What if that's me when I move to Baltimore?
Yeah, I was going to say, wait a second, what have I done?
What if you've recruited your biggest competitor? I don't have the energy for wedding season anymore.
No, I do. I love it. This is, to just bookend this, because I do have a client meeting in 5 minutes. One of the things I love about wedding photography is the exposure to so many different personality types all in one big, giant, chaotic day. And this is something that people talk about a lot in the industry, like charge more, shoot less. I'm going to shoot luxury weddings, 10,000 a pop, and then 20 weddings a year, 15 weddings a year, and be done. And it's like, well, what's the trade-off on that? There's a trade-off, okay? You can't just charge as much as you want and expect to get the same kinds of people that you started photographing. And I always want to be in this middle high ground where people value me as a professional. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch for some people's budget, but I'm still within reach of people that are still doing weddings in, the rec room of their church basement. Like that is some of my favorite stuff. You have to want to do that if you're going to sustain. And so people that pivot to only working with certain planners or whatever, now they're only working around the same people, generally the same venues, now the same kinds of personalities. Sometimes you get lucky. I mean, I'm not saying people that can afford $10,000 wedding photographers are all awful. Not at all. But it's still sort of the same little universe that is one of the things I've greatly enjoyed about exactly where I am in my market at my price point is I'm seeing both ends of that pattern. Even though I know I can charge more, I don't want to. You got to leave some headroom in your business everywhere. So anyway, that's part of the reason I've been able to stay so energized, because I'm excited to see there's so much array, and that feeds into also the genres of photography that I get access to shoot. There are people that specialize in only shooting South Asian weddings, and that's all they shoot. I would not enjoy that. I love South Asian weddings. I do maybe 8 a year, and that's the perfect amount. Like you want that variety. I need to go.
I love that. Just to be clear, I meant energy as in like I can't stand up for 12 hours a day back to back like you. You're very spry. You're a spry lad.
I went on a run Sam, yesterday. It was 75 degrees yesterday in Baltimore, February 23rd. 75 degrees outside, and I went for a run.
This is fine. Do not. You can't say I need to leave and then try to make me talk about the climate.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, I appreciate you, Sam.
Appreciate you.
Outro music. There's outro music now. Bada bing, bada boom. Here it is.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's good.